I have to say, all researchers are not boring, so let's show you how interesting we can be and shake it up a little bit and break some rules. We know how to do that, don't we, boys? Yeah. Okay. So just to start, I decided to not be a typical researcher and read you a long bio, which we tend to do in research. So I asked these gurus in research to give me a tweet, to tweet their bio for us. So here you go. Jack, Head of Research and Analytics at Turner Broadcasting, including CNN, TBS, TNT, Adult Swim. Forward-thinking, new things, skeptical of the claims of pundits and experts. Start with the facts. Dr. Jack Wakshlag. David Poltrack, CRO, CBS, researcher, professor, forecaster, what does that say? Observer of the media consumer from the analog to the digital and beyond. Mr. David Poltrack. Please welcome our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
You know, Shelley just talked about data and measurement, and I have to say it is a complex world, but everyone trying to measure a nonlinear world is doing a very good job. But we talk about big data, we talk about little data. It really doesn't matter if data is not contextualized around measuring what matters. So let's think about how we create smart data to inform smart decisions, especially in the world that we live in today. So let's really get at it and talk about this whole multi-platform world. I mean, how are consumers engaging? We talk about the connected viewer today. We're moving from Gen X, Gen Y to Gen C. How are we leveraging measurement today? Is it working? Are we measuring what matters when we know that TV viewers are multi-screening?
Look, we struggle with this all the time and every day. I stole a term from a very bright lady who works at Fox. Her name was Shelley. I call it Frankenmetrics. Frankenmetrics is what happens when you sew together arms and legs and different body parts of various measurement systems to try to create a holistic point of view. How well does it work? The answer is it's a really heavy lift. We can't do it all the time and every day. But Dave and I work together, for example, on the NCAAs. We translate that to some of the work that we do with CBS. We leverage 7 different metrics from 4 different research suppliers. You saw a similar process for the stuff in the Olympics. To come up with a number that lets you contextualize and understand the size and the strength of the various platforms.
What do you think about that, Dave?
So from 1980 to about 2005, nothing much happened in our business. A lot of cable networks were born, but people watched television the same way. Essentially, nothing much happened. This year, there's been more change in television than in the past 40 years, just already this season. Consider this, the lift provided by DVRs and VOD to the ratings this season is plus 25% versus last year. At CBS, our streaming is plus 43% versus last year. The discovery process by which people discover and watch television programs has changed dramatically, and we have to change all of our systems to go with it. All of our marketing approach is different. Last year, you look at the show last year, Elementary, a new show, that program was watched by 9 million people a week, live, as you normally would watch it. By the end of the week, 16 million people had watched the average episode, which made it the 8th highest ranked new program since the year 2000. Week 10, that show was still adding over 1 million new viewers. The last week of the season, it added 1.4 million viewers that had not yet been measured by Nielsen as viewers of that show during the entire season. And during the summer, it added 500,000 new viewers every week, adding up to a total of 72 million people who saw an episode of Elementary last year. The same phenomenon is happening on speed this year. The new shows are ahead of that pace already. So the average viewer is discovering television in a different way. If you watch our promos, you will see something you never saw on television before. Our promos are spending more time promoting going back to streaming and VOD and catching up with the shows than they are promoting next week's episode.
But that all sounds good, and we talk about viewership, but it really, at the end of the day, comes down to measuring content or a consumer-centric world. I mean, consumers don't look at the world as digital, as siloed in their minds. They looking for the content that they want to watch when they want to watch it. So what's working with our measurement systems today? What's not? What do you wish could happen in lightning speed so that we could really help create a real ROI model for content and for marketers?
I think the first thing is we need to understand what exactly we want to measure across the platforms. And from my point of view, and I'm not the only one who says this, you need three things to start with. You need to know how many, you need to know how often, you need to know how long. You need to know all three of those things on every single platform so you're able to get a sound metric of consumption. There's no way, just looking at uniques, to say what % of my viewership or exposure comes from one platform or the other. Now, it's important that I understand the various platforms because part of it is they operate in different markets. The digital video market is not the same as the television video market. The advertisers see them as separate, and so we are prepared to think of them as separate. We also want to see them together. But until we get all the media and all the platforms to start thinking about those three dimensions, how many reach, how often do they watch, how long do they watch when they watch, we're not going to be able to find a way to put these numbers together.
So what are we doing right? What are we not doing right? Well, the fact is our medium has always been measured and our business has been transacted on the basis of age and sex, currency, demographic. That never made any sense. It was never the ideal situation. And today, the 18 to 49 population is declining as a percentage of the population from 62% in 2002 to 53% today. It's actually declining in terms of total numbers. Yet if you read the press, you would think that the advertising industry is obsessed with 18 to 49-year-olds. They're not. They are obsessed with every one of us. We now have the ability and measurement through single source based data to tell you how many luxury buyers are in our audience, car buyers are in our audience, and how many of them are actually in the market for a car right now. Those kind of big data are just coming to the fore, and they're going to be built in to the media selection process. They're already being built into the media selection process. When you hear the term programmatic buying, most people are horrified and say this is a terrible thing because they think of it as a commodity, buying television or buying online as a commodity. But programmatic buying, when it incorporates the actual consumption power, it gives every viewer a value and encompasses the value of every viewer in the algorithm to determine where to find the viewers of greatest opportunity for them, is actually a major leap forward, and we're just at the beginning of discovering how to use that and apply that.
So how are we working with social analytics? Are we incorporating social analytics with all the behavioral data and the demographic data and the psychographic data and all the ways we're profiling, because we're no longer in a push world. It really is consumers pulling what they want when they want it. How are we starting to use all that in measurement?
Well, word of mouth has always been a major part of the marketing process. It's how television programs get discovered. It's how new cars get discovered. It's how new soft drinks get discovered. It's very, very critical, word of mouth. With the new social media, with online media, we are now for the first time able to get a glimpse at the word of mouth in progress. But Twitter is only 10% of the people in the population actually use Twitter, and it only represents 2% of the socialization of products and information. So we have to go beyond Twitter. Facebook is now, for the first time, starting to provide their own statistics, and that's a major step forward. Keller Fay actually measures all conversations on a personal level through a diary-based approach. So we have a lot of really good information now about word of mouth for the first time. That is definitely going to be integrated into the measurement and evaluation of the medium.
I think sometimes the analogy I use, and it comes from other statements, everything that you can count doesn't have to be important. And the ability to count social conversation via Twitter doesn't mean it's important. It means you have the opportunity, we have the opportunity, to determine how important it might be to our businesses. So we know that Twitter activity is actually fairly important for shows that skew young, absolutely unimportant for shows that have most of their audience over the age of 35. It's just, because Twitter is a place where young people express their points of view. It's not a place where older people express their points of view. So, don't look for your keys where the light is on. Look for your keys where they've been lost. Spend your time trying to understand the meaning. How much there is there? We know by looking at a wide range of data, including Keller Fay, which gives us a sense of total conversation, that for Adult Swim, Twitter and social analytics is important. For CNN, much less important, but still of value to understand.
Just as a researcher, I just keep putting this grid in my head, and I know dashboards are only as good as the data that we put in it and contextualizing the numbers, but I just see this chart in my head as you guys are talking. I keep saying Frankonomics too, but like when you put it in there and you have all your programs, let's say down one side and across the top, how all the measurement is working. How the traditional metrics work for engagement and amplification, and how many tweets and who's tweeting and what the discussion topics are and all the buzz data and how it's being shared on Facebook and followed and all of that. Do you guys have like integrated dashboards by program with how it's working in each of the channels and look at it holistically in any kind of way?
We're building it. We do it for certain events. We do it for CNN a lot. We do it for sporting events. I mean, you see the type of initiative NBC puts on for the Olympics. We do the same for the NCAA. Absolutely. We look at 7 different data streams across 4 different data suppliers to come up with that metric.
Are they in different stacks on your desk, different piles of data all over the place that you have to figure out?
They
don't
come
talk
in
to each other.
separately and independently. Certain data come in the next day, certain data come in a week later, certain data take longer. So part of it has to do with how and when the data gets delivered. It gets summed up and put into a dashboard we built.
Because we talk about stories are worth sharing, and it's easier to understand patterns and rhythms when you can tell a story from all disparate numbers. So how are you working with that, Dave?
Well, we just had a session that we have every year after the first few weeks of the season to evaluate where things stand and to develop our strategy going forward. And the presentation that we made to management this year included detailed description of all the measures. We had Twitter report from Twitter, report on Facebook activity. We had the Keller Fay data. We had our own segmentation, ratings by media trendsetters versus program passionates. We had the results of online surveys. Every day for the first 2 weeks of the season, our online panel, 2,000 people a day, were giving us reports on what they thought about the shows, how they watched the shows, if they didn't watch them, if they had them on their DVR, were they planning on watching them? That type of information is, exponentially greater than what we had 3-4 years ago when we made the same report to management.
I mean, part of the key is we do understand that people like to talk about television, and that's the beauty of the media we're talking about. Call it television, call it video, call it media, what you want. And that what we're seeing in social media is this huge ability to see that engagement over and over again. And so, you know, we take that very seriously, and we look at it because we do know it's a measure of engagement. I think one of the things about engagement that we all need to understand is these new devices, they don't create engagement, they don't drive engagement, they don't make engagement. What they do is they enable engagement. And enabling is the way to think about all of these things. You're giving the people who care about a show the opportunity to say things about a show, do things about a show, share ideas about a show with their circle of friends. And that is very powerful for a couple of reasons. One, it's good for them. They like to be able to do it. And two, it's great for the advertiser. Because if I can associate an advertiser with that group of people, if that group of people understands, for example, that AT&T sponsors a Conan Sync app that allows them to engage socially with people who are involved with the show and or people who are, and or their group of friends, they appreciate that. And that's a wonderful thing for a sponsor.
I'll give you an example of how this works. So our online audience for our programs that are streamed online is 20 years younger than our on-air audience. 20 years. So this is where young people discover CBS programs. How I Met Your Mother, when it first went on CBS, was the median age of the audience on TV was 43. The median age of the audience online was 28. Gradually, we saw the How I Met Your Mother's audience on TV, the 18 to 34 audience build more and more as the people transferred from online to on-air. That is a process. We're actually now seeing that same process for Crazy Ones. Big difference is when we saw it with How I Met Your Mother, it was a surprise to us. Now we expected it, and we're trying to manage it in advance, and we hope to be able to accelerate it.
So I think just to wrap it up, because we have 2 minutes to go, and I do want to get a question from the audience, because I know there's some really burning questions out there. I mean, I think my last question is, I think it's all about content. We want people to watch. If people are watching, we're happy. Are we really thinking about the model correctly from a channel to the viewer perspective, from a media to the viewer, or should we start thinking about a consumer-centric model of viewer and how they're engaging with content today? Just a question mark, which does change the model quite a bit and will scare the shit out of all of us. But let's just ask that question.
No, it's the right question. To think about media doing things to people is the way we thought about the world in the 30s and 40s. Those days are gone. People use media the way they want, when they want, to get what they want. If you're trying to create, if you're trying to push them, they will not get pushed. They are in control. We believe they are in control. We think they use second screen to remain in control. We think they use second screen to remain engaged. We find that there's a lot of activation and interaction. We've done some really good research about the Time Warner Media Lab that demonstrates our second screen's ability to, yes, if you let people get distracted by second screens, they will.
All right, next panel, we'll talk about technology. We have to take one question, just one question, because I saw a burning question, and then we got to go and wrap up.
Well, Reed Hastings, unfortunately, who likes to talk about statistics, doesn't like to share anything about the audiences of his shows, but despite that, we actually do measure House of Cards, and we know what the audience of House of Cards is. House of Cards is similar to a successful Showtime or HBO show. Netflix is Showtime or HBO without the tether to a cable system.
Look,
So
these are-
that's basically.
Shelley's standing here, and he's about to pounce, so let's
We
go.
done?
We
Okay.
got to get off, guys. Thank you very much. Everyone will be around.
Yay. Big round of applause for these guys. Shelley, Zalis.